I once had a plastic ghost in my old house. Just to clarify, it's not actually plastic. I know you've been clickbaited, but don't click off just yet, because this story does involve plastic and ghosts. So first, I'll set the scene. I, who was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, had a sister 5, a brother 7, and 2 parents. So at the time, we were all asleep in my mom and dad's room. I don't know why. Maybe they were painting my room. And the bed was against the wall, with the bathroom in front of the other side of the bed, opposite of the wall. My brother slept against the wall, my dad beside him with my sister in the middle, then my mom beside me, and finally me at the end. Now I don't know when, but at the dead of night when the rest of the family is asleep, and I am under the covers, also trying to fall asleep, then suddenly I hear what sounds like a plastic being kicked, like a plastic bag being kicked by somebody. I would get terrified and freeze in place, whilst I'll hear a kicking continue. Now I did get overwhelmed by fear for who or what could be behind this, and curiosity for what would happen if I checked who was kicking the plastic bag, behind who was kicking the plastic. In the end, I decided to do nothing, as I am too terrified by this happening to doing anything. After a while, I feel sweat in every part of my body beginning to annoy me, and suddenly I get the urge to really use the bathroom, but I manage to suppress those feelings and urges, as I mentioned many times before. I am too terrified to look or move. I neither know when nor when I fell asleep, but at some point I did. I woke up pretty early in the morning with my mom. Sister and brother were still asleep, and my dad was in the bathroom getting ready for work. I then figured that it was most likely a dream, but then proceeded through that assumption out of the window when I tried to get out of the bed as I froze in place. You want to know what I saw? A fucking plastic bag on the floor. The end. Sorry if my grammar and punctuation and spelling are a bit off, honestly. I'm not the best at typing stories. I was just sitting here watching TV, and suddenly saw a little wisp of smoke float past me. I didn't think it was anything supernatural at first. I actually got so startled that I thought something was on fire, jumped up and unplugged everything around me. Went around filling outlets to see if they were hot, went around sniffing but found nothing. I plugged everything back in, and have now been sitting here nervously for hours out of fear that something might start a fire, but it hasn't happened again. It's 7 a.m. now, and I haven't slept yet. Curious if anyone has had such an experience, because I can't explain it. I don't smoke, no candles were lit, nothing like that. And there are no outlets or devices in the direction that the smoke came from. I'm very perplexed. When I was a kid, I went to a friend's house. We were to clean his room so we could go to the theme park the next day, and we put the board games together. Mousetrap was the hardest. Cleaned up the clothes. We went to eat a popsicle. I had a pink, he had a blue. We heard a massive boom from the upstairs, like an explosion went off. We ran upstairs to his room, and it was more destroyed than when we started. On the bed, there were a ton of pictures torn. It looked like the closet had puked clothes all over the room. And it smelled like piss. Both dogs were on the chains outside. One time we was watching a movie and it ejected out of the player, and we went upstairs. Literally walked upstairs and sat at the top. The other kids don't remember that the parents never spoke of it again. I remember that happening though. I remember that my mom being mad about the washer and dryer, that their doors would slam open and close in 2 different directions by themselves. That was when I was a kid, but now I live in a house and I'm hearing knocking from inside dressers, scratching on doors. I can't sleep. I'm almost awake 72 hours and I work. I need some insight. I was left alone to watch the dog for a few hours and I heard my brother laugh, but he wasn't home when I looked. First time hearing a voice. I don't know what to do. I'm at my ends wet. When I was around 9 years old, I had a sleepover at my childhood's best friend's house. It started out like any normal sleepover. We had pasta, and mind you, she was allergic to butter, so she just ate it plain. This is important, I promise. I always had to wash my hands when I ate, something she was allergic to for the sake of her safety. By the time bedtime comes around, we went to sleep in her twin-size bed. This is where shit gets weird. I had woken up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, but I had noticed the hallway light was on and the door of my friend's room was cracked. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to check out who was still up at this late hour. I peered my head into the hallway and didn't see anyone. I shut the light off and decided to try to get some sleep. I figured someone forgot to shut the light off, so that's why I shut it off myself. I laid in bed for about 10 minutes when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs near the door. Keep in mind I'm only 9, and I was scared shitless. The hallway light turned on and I noticed a figure standing in the crack of the doorway. The door slowly opened to my friend's mom. Now, this might seem like she was checking on us, but she turned her head like a dog in confusion. I had my eyes closed almost all the way to the point where I knew she couldn't tell I was up. My friend all of a sudden rises up, says nothing, and runs to her mom standing at the door. My friend starts crying, and without saying anything, she points in my direction and begins crying even louder. Then her mother finally spoke in reference to me. "Did she touch butter, honey?" I was so confused and I couldn't understand why her mother would ask such a dumb question when she seen me wash my hands. I tried my best to pretend I was asleep, but before my friend could respond to her mom's question, she pointed at me once again and said the words, "I know you're awake." I refused to open my eyes and show that I was awake. They eventually left the room, but before my friend's mother left with her, she said in the creepiest voice, almost demonic, "I'll be back soon. You better be asleep." I was on the verge of tears. They closed the door and shut off the hallway light. A few minutes pass until I hear knocking on the walls. I covered myself in blankets for comfort and somehow managed to fall asleep. When I had woken up the next morning, my friend was sleeping peacefully next to me, as if nothing had occurred that night. I woke her up and asked her what her problem was last night and why she was crying. She looked at me completely dumbfounded. Her mother and my friend had no recollection of the previous night, but I knew for a fact that what happened was real. This wasn't a nightmare. This was something entirely different. I never slept over there after that again. Turns out that a woman who looked identical to my friend's mom died in the house from a house fire. Maybe I'd seen that woman. I still have no idea what to make of this situation, but occurrences with the paranormal began after I left that house. I have many more stories, but this one still confuses me to the age of 18. Not many people believe when I tell them this, so I guess I'm writing it on here. I live in our family home. This house has been home to many generations in my family on my mother's side. Our family was one of the rich ones back in the day. They had a large wealth and weren't afraid to show it. They were the first house in town to get a television when they came out. This house was a place where my female ancestors gave birth and where they died. This is where things get interesting. My great-great-great-great uncle died when he was between the ages of 2 and 5. Throughout the years, the stories changed. I have lived in this house my entire life, and there have been some odd things to happen. When I was little, about 2, my mother would rock me in the rocking chair, and I would always look forwards to the stairs and laugh. Around this age, I had also seen my grandfather in the yard. In his living years, he had a garden and would get up every morning at 4 to work in his garden. I had seen a man in the garden while my mother was making breakfast. I had told her he was raking the grass. When I described things to my mother, she realized he was tending to the garden. So then she showed me a picture of my grandfather, a picture I had never seen, and I said it was the same man. There had been instances of things being moved in the house, but never anything bad. One night my father had taken a shower. While he was finishing up, he placed the face cloth he had used over the shower door. It had fallen in, and he picked it up and put it back. It fell in again, and he said, "Fuck it," and went upstairs to bed. He is always the first to wake up. The next morning when he woke up, the face cloth was outside of the shower on the mat, right in front of the door. I have also explained something similar. I was reading on my e-reader, and I had placed it on top of the stack of books on my nightstand. My parents called me down to supper, and when I came back upstairs, my e-reader was under all of my books. Recently, I was on the phone with my boyfriend. It was around 11 o'clock at night. From the kitchen, you can see the stairs I had mentioned previously. I was sitting at the kitchen table looking out the window, and when I turned my head, I saw what looked like a little boy squatted down, playing with our cat. The cat was laying on his back, playing with what it looked like a little boy. It was odd. It looked like a little boy was trying to pet his belly. This is everything so far. I just felt like I needed to share this story. Thank you to those that reached the bottom. I really appreciate your attention.